So the reason I'm making this video is because on a current project that I'm on, I had to design a social media feed for this app I'm designing, and I wanted to get a sense of like what other apps are doing, other top players in the space are doing. Like Instagram I looked at, which you see here on the right, Facebook, LinkedIn, even YouTube has like a really great feed. It's a video feed, but it's still, a really, really well-designed feed. And, these companies all have massive design teams behind them, data analysts kind of analyzing what works, what doesn't, what's sticky, what users like, what users prefer. They're doing all this research. So it'd be kind of foolish and naive of me to try to recreate the wheel on some of this stuff. That's not to say I should completely copy it, but it's more about, understanding best practices and then sort of innovating upon those and then tailoring them to your specific client, right? And your specific users' needs and business needs. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, I did exactly copy Instagram because I can't show you what I did for my client, but that's okay. Here you see Instagram on the right. I literally just kind of recreated it. I basically just wanted a reference to see what their spacing paradigm was and kind of how they're constructing this component and try to understand some of the variations that we might see of this component. Because the point of this video is basically to show you how to create some more complex components. And I'm looking at this that I just highlighted as the post component, right? So this is a post, and there's going to be some variations of this post. For example, not every post is going to have a location, right? Instagram allows you to add a location, but not every post is going to have a location tied to it. And that's important because when I'm constructing this component, I want to be able to build it in a way that, I can turn this location on and off and have the user's name sort of center vertically with the avatar if there is no location. Just so I don't have to do a bunch of rework and make a bunch of different variants of this little post header here. So yeah, I'm looking at this entire post as a bunch of smaller components. So we have a post header, which would be a component in itself. We have the post itself, which is the photo or video that the user uploads. And then we have some post actions, right? We can comment, share, and archive a post. Then we have this likes indication, so who's actually liked it. And now the cool thing about this, and something Instagram does really well to probably boost engagement on the app, is they show you which of your mutual friends have liked the post. So all of these would show up if these are friends of mine on the app, and that would most likely encourage me to like this photo, right? It's that network effect that they do really well. And this liked by username and 67 others, this would only show if this was a mutual friend of yours, most likely. So there are going to be some variations of this smaller component, right? If none of my mutual friends have liked this probably won't display. This will move over, right? And then this will probably just say something and I'm pretty sure this is what it says in the app. This would just say 67 likes, right? So there's going to be some variation. And we want to account for all of those different variations in this component. Same thing here, right? This text down here that says view all 795 comments, this will only display if there's a comment on this post, right? But I want to be able to turn this off if there are no comments yet. And I want this to sort of slide up, maintaining the spacing between the caption if there are no comments yet. So there's going to be some variation, and I'm just taking this all into account when I'm constructing this component. So just to recap, we have a post header, we have the post itself, we have some post actions, we have the likes indication, we have the caption, we have the comments indication, or the comments counter, and the timestamp. And one other thing to note about the post itself, just as an Instagram user, I know that Instagram allows you to upload photos at different ratios. So they have this max height photo, which is the largest photo you can update or upload. And this is a 4:5 ratio, I'm pretty sure, just based on my research. They also allow you to upload a 1:1, which is a square ratio, which would be, for this artboard size, that would be 375 by 375. And then they also allow you to upload a landscape ratio. So it's that more 16:9 kind of ratio for videos and more landscape photography. But again, I don't want to have to create a bunch of different components for all of these different variations. I want to account for this primitive component, as we'll call it, right? It's a component of a component. And I want all these variants to be built into this one component. So I know that's kind of a mouthful, but this will start making sense when I actually start componentizing stuff. One thing I did in advance, just to save some time, is I already created some avatar components and I basically just drop this into an avatar artboard. So this is how I usually construct my design systems. I'll start with layer styles, some type styles, icons, and these I just pulled from a feather icon library. I didn't find the exact Instagram icons, but I have this feather icon plugin, and I pretty much found icons that are very similar to what Instagram uses. This navigation component, don't worry about. We're not going to construct this in this video, but I did drop that in my navigation artboard. Avatars, I just did a quick audit, basically, of this screen. And we're just going to, for the sake of this tutorial, just assume that this is the entire UI that we have to work off of. So based on this, right, this is our large avatar, this is our small avatar. So I just kind of created components there, just plopped them on the screen. I didn't like label them or anything. Normally I would, but we have a large avatar, a small avatar, and then I made a separate component for the small avatar group. So this is my naming convention. I do avatar, small, group. This is just avatar small, this is avatar large. And I just did that to save some time. One thing I also did is I just did an audit of all the text styles, and I documented them as a text style. So I went in, basically there's only two sizes of text here, not counting the nav bar here. There's size 14, and there's a size 12, but then there's some different variations. So we have a size 14 semi-bold, so I just named this body strong. I named our actual body text down here just body, right? Then there's going to be like a span here. That's also our body strong. This is our body strong. This stuff is our body. This is our body, and this is our small text again. So this and this are our small text. And then I also just documented some text colors, right? So we have our high contrast text, which is just our pure white, and then we have our low contrast text, which is our white at 50%. Now normally I would have probably an entire grayscale that goes from like gray 1 to gray 6 just for like different shades of gray. But again, we're just assuming that this is all we have to work off of. So I just named this our high contrast, this is our low contrast. So all that stuff is loaded up as local style, and that's important because whenever we're constructing components, pretty much anything inside of a component should be documented already as either a component or a text style or a color style. That way, or at least that's how I prefer to do it, because that way I can always just come to my design system screens and make a global change from here, and it will dynamically update across my entire UI. So it's really important to be pretty meticulous about this stuff if you're building something that's a lot of screens. It's supposed to scale. It's fine to not do this, obviously, if you're just trying to design a dribble shot, for example, or like a one screen design. But if you're actually building an entire design system that you need to hand off eventually to a developer or to a client, like it's really important to be really meticulous about your documentation and your layer naming and your naming convention, and this is stuff you got to think about. This is why UI design is so much more than just visual design, and it's like a pet peeve of mine when people say UI design is just making things look nice, because it's so much more than that. It's something I've had to learn on the job, and it's something that is so valuable to like get this right if you're building something that's supposed to scale. So yeah, I'll probably do a whole separate series on like design systems and how to properly construct them, but this will be a good precursor to get into it. And I'm sorry for rambling, but all this stuff is really important. All right, so let's just bring this artboard over a little bit, because in advance I just created a artboard in my design system called post. So basically, as we go in and start componentizing stuff in our UI, I can just start documenting anything post related right on this post artboard. Also, one thing to note, you'll kind of notice my naming conventions as I start documenting, and I've derived a lot of this convention from the Terisly design system. I'll link that below or somewhere on the screen. I think it's a really great design system methodology and component library. I think it's a little better actually than the atomic design methodology that some of you guys might be familiar with, so definitely worth checking out. But yeah, if you guys are like curious about my naming convention and like how I got it, that's sort of where it's from. But I'm looking at this and we have a post header, right? And again, not every post is going to have a location, so I want to be able to turn on and off this layer and have my text, sort of my username, vertically align with the avatar if there's no location. So I know I'm going to be using an auto layout for that. So let's just put this in an auto layout, Shift A. We'll just name this post header text. Now you could make this a component in and of itself, but this is probably never going to be a component in isolation. So I'm not going to get like too meta with like components within components within components. I mean, you could if you want, but I'm not going to. What I am going to do is put the avatar and the post text in an auto layout. And I'm just going to name this post whoops, I can't spell, post header text. And the reason I put that in auto layout is because I want to be able to turn off the location and have the username center with the avatar. So that's going to be really valuable just so I can show a bunch of different variations of this component. And now I could put this and this in an auto layout, but the thing is I want this post header to be able to resize to different screen sizes. So like a tablet or a desktop screen, this component really shouldn't change across those screen sizes, but it should be able to, resize respectively to respond to the screen size. So I'm actually not going to put these guys in an auto layout. What I am going to do though is select both of these and hit Command Option G, which is the shortcut for putting something inside of a frame. And I'm just going to make sure this is constrained to the top right, which it is. And this stuff, let's just test the resizing. So that stuff will pin to the left, this stuff will pin to the right, no matter how large my screen size is. We don't have any like bad scaling issues with the icon, so this is all correct. So this isn't going to be an auto layout actually. I'm just going to adjust the padding, and what I'll do is just come in here and move this stuff over. Whoops. So like I want this to align with 15 pixels of margin. And let's see, why isn't this letting me do this? There we go. And I want this to have 15 pixels of margin as well. And then with the entire frame, what we can do is just do this, and now I'll just have this center aligned. So this entire thing is our frame, and make sure this one is also center aligned. So now we have a frame here that we're able to resize. That accounts for the top and bottom padding and the left and right margin. So we can just call this primitives post header. This is our first thing we'll actually componentize here. So that's the name, and now I'm just going to do Command Option K, and that is our first primitive component. And I'm just going to make sure that all of my master components are documented in my design system. That's how I like to work. I like my masters to always be on my design system artboards. And then what I'll do is I'll just duplicate this, drag an instance to my actual design. Because I like to be able to go right to my design system, make a change here, and have it update throughout my entire design. So that's why I like to put my masters here. So that's like the first part of this post component. We have the post header. So the next part would be the actual post content itself, so the photo or video. So this one here is that 4:5 ratio, but again, there's going to be some variations depending on what the user uploads. So I'm actually just going to componentize this guy, and we'll call this rectangle primitives post contents 4:5. And again, I'll take the master component here, just drop it onto my artboard, and then I'll just create an instance and bring it to my UI. So that is one variation of the post contents, but there's going to be two others. The first one is going to be a 1:1 ratio, so I'm just going to make this a square at 375 by 375, and we'll just change the name to 1:1, and I'm just going to recomponentize this. And then I'm just going to duplicate this guy again. And this one's going to be our 16:9. So I'm going to make the width 16, make the height 9, and then I'm going to hit this little constrain proportions icon, and then I'm going to make the width 375. So it's going to maintain that 16:9 ratio, but the width is going to be the size of our artboard, which is 375. So we're going to make this one 16:9 and recomponentize. Let me just kind of tidy this up a little. Okay, so we're starting to see the anatomy of our post, right? We have the post header, now we have the post contents. Now let's work on these guys, our post actions. One thing I'm going to do is put these guys in an auto layout, because not every post is necessarily going to have comments. You can actually disable comments on a post on Instagram, so I want to be able to turn stuff on and off, right? So if I turn off comments, I still want this padding to be maintained. So that's why this is going to be in an auto layout. Oops, let me turn that back on. And I'm basically going to do the same thing we did above with the post header, where we want this to be able to resize depending on our screen size. So what I'm going to do is, again, put this in a frame by Command Option G. I'm still learning some of these shortcuts, so I apologize. Before we resize it, let's make sure this is pinned to the right, and it is. So let's just extend the frame the full width of the artboard. I'm just going to move this stuff over so our frame is accounting for the padding. Same thing here. Actually, let's make sure this stuff is centered. Just kidding, that's not what I want. I want this to be centered vertically, so when I resize, it should stay in the middle. We want 10, right? So just make sure we have 10 top and bottom. Let me get in a little tighter. There we go. And just make sure this guy is centered like so. And now we can make sure this resizes properly, and it does. And now we can just componentize this and call it primitives post actions. And again, I'm going to just drag this master component here and drag the instance back to my design file. Now let's work on this guy. And I think the spacing should be 4. It's supposed to be 4 top and bottom. So same kind of thing. I'll actually auto layout this because again, we can turn this stuff on and off. So let's just put this in auto layout, call this likes information. And now we can, so the reason I did that, right, is so I can just turn this on and off and have that update dynamically. And let's again put this inside of a frame. Make it the full width. You don't have to make it the full width. It's kind of a personal preference thing. And yeah. Oh, and let's just extend this 8 pixels. So we account for the 4 pixels top and bottom, and now we can just align that in the middle. And now we can componentize this guy as, what do we call this? I'll just make this the same name. Primitives likes information. Componentize that. Bring this here. I know this is a little tedious, but this is kind of what it takes if you want to create dev-ready assets. So bring that here. Cool. And this guy, let's see, I think we want 4 pixels top and bottom. All right, it's supposed to be anyway. And this should be 8. So I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the process just to speed this video up a little and kind of componentize the caption, componentize this guy, and componentize this guy, and we'll be back when all that's done. All right, so I went ahead and componentized the rest of this post footer. So we have the likes, we have the caption, we have the comments, and the timestamp here. So these are all instances of the master components here. One thing I do want to do though, just rather than working with all of these smaller components, let's just create one component of the post footer, which will contain all of these nested components. So I'm just going to put an auto layout around these guys, and let's just call this let's call this primitives post footer, and then we can componentize this. Same kind of deal. I'll just bring the master here, and I'll just bring an instance back here. And now what I'll do, I'll just tidy this stuff up a bit. And what I will do is move this over, and let's just increase the size of this design system file because I just want to make this a little easier to read. So I'm going to bring all my primitives sort of to the right side. And then just to create some like hierarchy in how I'm reading this, I'm going to bring this guy over here just so, you know, as someone kind of scanning this document, I have like all my smallest components on the far right. Then, you know, like these are my smallest components, and we kind of get a little larger. Now we can start creating our main post component, which is going to be comprised of a post header, post contents, and a post footer. So I'm just duplicating instances of the masters here. And let's just make sure this is all aligned like so. So these are all of the parts of the post, right? We have a header, the contents, and the footer. And let's just make sure that I like to just kind of bring these in the order in which they are viewed in the layer list. So we have header first, which should be followed by the contents, which should be followed by the footer. And now we can take this entire thing, put it in auto layout, componentize it, and just call this post. But one thing I want to do is make sure we account for all the variations of this post that we might have. So I'm just going to take some of these different variations of the contents and drag them into our auto layout component here. But initially, you know, we're not going to see all of these different variations. Maybe we'll just see the one by one to start. So let's just turn off the other ones. And now this is our post component. And what I can do is I can just delete this stuff over here. I can bring this to my artboard, to my actual UI. And now I can kind of just, you know, for like a developer, I could show them all the different variations of this post just so they understand. So let's just create a social media feed like so. And let's just extend this artboard a little more. And I'm just going to put all this stuff in an auto layout now, and we'll just call this feed. And maybe I want to give some padding in between each of these posts just to make sure, you know, there's some breathing room from one post to the next. So with this master post component selected, I'll just give it some vertical padding. Maybe we'll do 4. So there'll be 4 pixels of top and bottom padding, but you know, in between each post, that means there'll be 8 pixels. I think that looks about right. But the power of this now is I can show all the different variations. So maybe this one, you know, we can turn off the location. Maybe this post doesn't have a location. Maybe this one, instead of the 1 by 1, we can make it the 16 by 9. And maybe this one we want to be our 4 by 5. So I'm showing some variation already in this feed. Maybe we can go a step further. Maybe this one doesn't have the likes indication. Maybe like none of your mutual friends have liked this, so we can just make this say 67 likes, right? This is another variation. And maybe this last one, there are no comments yet. So we can just turn off this component in our layer list. And there we go. We have a social media feed that shows all of our different variations of all the different posts that might occur. And if we want to go a step further and make this look a little nicer, we can select all these rectangles and use something like the Unsplash plugin and just insert a random photo into each. And there we go. We have something that sort of resembles a social media feed. So hopefully you guys understand the reason why, you know, I'm so meticulous about documenting everything along the way, creating, you know, components within components. It allows you to work very efficiently as your design system starts to scale, as you create more and more screens. Obviously, you don't have to go through the trouble of doing all this if you're just trying to, like, you know, do a quick visual design mockup. But if you're, you know, designing a bunch of screens, maybe your app has something like, you know, 300 screens. You don't want to have to be doing a lot of manual work. You want to lay the foundation up front, so it makes your job a lot easier as you go. So hopefully that was valuable. I'm going to do a lot more design system videos because I really feel like that's sort of the missing link with a lot of like designers trying to make it. No one's really going to teach you how to do it. It's something you just have to like learn on your own. You know, I didn't really know any of this stuff about like 2 years ago, and I just had to practice and like learn from other top designers, other design systems. So yeah, hopefully this was valuable and you learned something. If you have any questions about this topic, please drop those below and I will be happy to answer you guys, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.